Christian Parenting.
Let's do a Q&A. It's been a little bit since we have done one. I have a couple of questions. I will do another one here this summer, but if you have a question and you want me to answer that this summer, go ahead and check out the link in the show notes for that. But also, if you listen to Monday's episode or if you've been on getting the emails, tickets are officially available for you for Little by Little Homeschool Conference. It'll be in Syracuse, New York on September 19th. If you want all the details, you want to grab your tickets, go ahead and check out the link in the show notes or go to littlebylittlehomeschool.com/conference. We are really excited about the details, speakers, all of the things, and hope that you're able to join us. Before I get into answering these questions, I wanted to officially welcome you to this podcast episode of Little by Little Homeschool. I am really glad that you are here to listen, and I hope that these questions that possibly you hear, maybe yourself currently in it, or maybe it'll just be something that'll stick in the back of your mind and you'll say, oh, okay, and pull it out when you do encounter this. We tend to, as homeschool moms, encounter sort of the same situations. There might be a little bit of a give or take or nuance or just difference in it because our kids are different. But I think it's really good to listen to maybe someone's advice or perspective. Again, this is just purely from my perspective and from my worldview, from my experiences that I share. And I know that we all won't always agree and we'll do things differently, but just a little bit of input. And, I'm like, take it or leave it. It's okay. I've heard advice and I'm like, that doesn't work for me. And that's okay. I'm not offended. You shouldn't be offended either. But let's get into this episode. As always, if there's any way that I can be able to help you, there are other resources and everything over at the website, littlebylittlehomeschool.com. And you can get all kinds of answers for things and whatever else you're kind of looking for. But now let's get into these questions. The first one says, I love the idea of using a morning basket for my preschooler next year, and he really loves being read to and has a good attention span. But morning baskets I see online often have like 15 books or activities they do each morning. She gives some examples of manners, memory verse, stories, counting, etc., which all sounds awesome. I agree, that does. But is it not a bit much for a little one to jumping so much from one thing to another? Would love advice for a morning basket for pre-K kindergarten age. Now, I did do an episode a couple of weeks back with some curriculum advice for preschool and kindergarten. And go ahead and listen to that one if you have young ones, because maybe you don't necessarily need to do a morning basket with that. It might just be enough to follow some of those play-based ideas and curriculum and resources that I had mentioned. But I do love the idea of a morning basket. And whether you put it in a basket or not, I have what's called morning time. And I do have a process of how to choose what you're going to do and to narrow it down, and the process that I have used even for older kids. I have continued to do morning time, and that's all that information, more details about that is going to be in your homeschool blueprint. So when it comes to this, you can have a basket. If you don't have a basket, it's still morning time. It's still something that you're going to be intentional about. So let's go into this. 15 books or activities, yeah, that is a lot. But listen, here's the thing. As homeschool moms, across the board, I see in general that we get so excited. And there are so many great resources. There's so much that we want to do with our kids. And as I graduate my youngest, I'm like, oh, we never got to this. We never got to that. There was just a lot that I wanted to do that we didn't get to. Not because we weren't doing anything, because we were also already doing really good things. There really is only so much that we can do. Yes, teaching our children the examples, she said, of manners, memory verse, stories, counting, yes, and they will get those things. So one example I want to give for my son here, my older homeschooler, is that there was a documentary series I wanted to do, and I was like, oh, we just didn't get to it. We got to the end here, and he's just jumped into a lot of his electives and working on contracts and fulfilling contracts for videos that he has done and that he's been commissioned to do, and we just didn't get to it. And so there's been, through his youth group, like a small group of older teen boys Bible study, and they decided to go through this documentary series. It's obviously it's a biblical thing. And so I was like, really? I was like, wow, God, you are so good. I wanted to watch that with him, but even though he's not watching it with me, he's watching it with some trusted advisors, and it's just as good. And so it's kind of neat how God still gets those things in. And anyway, that is a lot. 15 different things is a lot. So I'm going to give you a couple of options, or really what I try to focus on is maybe 3 things at the most, even for my older kids. And I know that there's a lot that you want to do. So pick just 3 things. And maybe once you get through one of those resources, so this is what I would do. I would pick 3 books. I had certain categories. And again, all this is in your homeschool blueprint. And when one book was finished or resource was finished, I would just insert a new one. So we were still doing 3. So if you wanted to just pick a couple of things and you have some resources, you have the couple that you're going to start with, and then when one gets done, you just insert the other one. Another option would be is to do some type of loop of it and say, on this day, we're going to do these 2, and then maybe there's 2 that you always do, but the third one you just kind of keep changing in and out. On the first day, you do this one resource. On day 2, it's swap with a different resource. And day 3, it's swap with a different resources. Maybe it's just 3 other ones that you are just kind of swapping in right there. But really just kind of focus on look at your child, and you might say, okay, I really want to work on their manners. And so that is a top thing. So I'm just going to, from your example, manners and memory verse, and you're going to do a story. And the other example of counting. Maybe that just happens in life, and you don't necessarily have to use a resource. But I really do think that 15 books, activities is a lot. And if it feels like a lot for you, you're not going to carry through with it. So pick however many you think that you are going to be consistent with and that you're going to do. And again, this is pre-K, kindergarten. I know that you're probably really excited about it, but those things, they will get into them. But I would say focus on what's most important that you want to impart upon them right now. And then just be consistent and do those things. And consistency doesn't mean 5 days a week. Consistency for pre-K, kindergarten age might be 3 days a week. You might say, we're going to do this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And that is perfectly okay. Question number 2. Do you have any tips for helping a child that tends toward shyness? My oldest takes a very long time to warm up to people and often feels very shy in new settings or even in large groups, even if he knows most of the kids. Sometimes I wonder if it's something I'm doing wrong, and if he was in school, if that would help him. He often comes very hard against it, any pushing from me, in this type of setting, and I end up feeling frustrated, and of course it doesn't help either of us. This has been a hard area of our lives lately, and I'm really not sure what to do except to keep talking to him about it when we're in a comfortable setting and both feeling calm. Would love to hear any thoughts you have. Okay. I heard something many years ago that still stuck with me. I don't know if I read it in a book, somebody said it. I will not take credit for it, but it stuck in my head. And again, I don't remember the exact wording. It would probably be good if I remember the exact wording. But basically, it was just saying that shyness is actually selfishness. When we meet somebody new, and if we kind of just hide back and we just put our head down and we're actually being selfish. We are in a way that we are thinking about ourselves. We are protecting ourselves instead of thinking about the other person. And I wonder if I'm not an extrovert, but I force myself to be an extrovert. I wonder if an extrovert thinks more about other people. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. This comes to the top of my head. And I'm not saying that an introvert thinks only of themselves, but an extrovert maybe is thinking about other people. But you could have an extrovert that just is very bubbly and out and wanting to be out with people, but talk about themselves all the time. So maybe that doesn't quite work. But that really just stuck with me because I was like, you know what? I think there is a bit of truth in that we are thinking about ourselves. So this might be an angle to kind of take with him and say, how would God want us to act in this situation? And I would just bring it back to the character of, how we should be as a Christian. For example, in so many situations, I would rather just be a wallflower and hang in the back, but I try to think to myself and say to myself, how would I feel if I was in this situation? How would I want others to treat me? And that's how I treat them. So you can also use that also with your son and just say, we're going into a situation. It's not about us. It's about somebody else. How can we show the love of God to these other people, even to other believers and Christians who already know about the love of God? So that might be an angle to take with him, but also preparing him for situations. I remember talking to my kids a lot especially as they were tweens and teens, and they just felt awkward and just weird in situations. I'm like, okay, so you're going into the situation, or okay, you're starting a new youth group. How do we would kind of role play, and I would help them to come up with questions and teach them how to really listen to other people. And so you would maybe ask, first, obviously, if you're meeting someone the first time, what their name is, but then just a question could be like, what do you like to do with your free time? Or what's something that you really enjoy doing? If you can get tell your son, if you can get the other person talking about them, that it's not about him. So he can still kind of be a little bit of an introvert, but just continue to ask questions, ask follow-up questions of that person. And you will find that, this is a way that we as believers in Christ are able to form relationships with non-believers too, by just finding things about them and talking to them and being really interested, not just asking questions and then looking off or into space, or asking questions just so you get to answer the question. So I would say just be consistent. And also I understand that not wanting to push. At certain times my kids were a bit more shy, and I'm thinking of one specifically, but just preparing them for these situations and reminding them that it's not about them, and talking to them about what God might be teaching them through this. So I don't know. I hope that was helpful. I feel like there's more I want to say, but I don't want to keep this too long. Last question is, she says you have a 12-year-old girl who has been homeschooled from the beginning, currently finishing 6th grade. She is extremely bright and strong-willed. In the last year, she has been angry and expresses despair at the lack of control she has over her homeschool and life in general. For example, she doesn't want to be reminded to take a shower, or to do chores, etc., or wants to decide when to complete her schoolwork. Our homeschool work takes less than 4 hours a day. This is including group time, and she gives some examples. Chores are reasonable for age and clearly listed on a checklist posted on the fridge. I would love, love, love for her to be able to be more independent, and I am constantly trying to put systems in place to assist her. But we have a minimum expectations that must be met, and when they are not met, I do enforce them. I agree with that. And we are making progress in the chores and personal hygiene department. Oh my goodness, the personal hygiene department. I am so glad that is... I'm so glad my kids are beyond that. Y'all that are going through it right now, I can feel your pain. However, she goes on and says, whenever I have tried to allow her to decide when to do her schoolwork and plan her own work for the week, it's a disaster. She puts everything off until the last minute and then does a terrible or messy or incomplete job, which ends up with her having to redo her work. We have to redo lessons, and both of us are frustrated. Yeah, it's not good for the relationship. It's hard. I have tried walking her through using a planner, demonstrating, discussing how to think about what needs to be done, and making a plan. I know planning is a learned skill, but she wants to go from 0 to 100 with no baby steps and gets angry and combative when I put bumper rails up. Any advice on how to help her and or me with this transition? I'm emotionally exhausted. I can hear it, and I feel your pain. I've always loved homeschooling and felt confident, but this past year has left me feeling lost and inadequate, both as a mom and a teacher. Sorry, this is so long. No, please do not apologize. That's good. I think that a lot of us are going to encounter this situation or might be going through it right now. And I know that you're emotionally exhausted. It is, I think that homeschooling and parenting, mothering of children, especially when we are being intentional. If you're not intentional, it's not as exhausting, but it is the most emotionally exhausted that you will be. I remember falling into bed at night, just emotionally exhausted, not necessarily physically exhausted. So it's an actual real thing. And this is hard. So let's see. Okay, sounds like everything that you're doing is very reasonable. Reasonable amount of time for school, reasonable expectations. I mean, she's 12. She should be able to do a lot of chores and most things around the house, and it should be expected that she helps out. And some personalities are going to lean to this more. They want to be more mature than they actually can handle, than their brain can actually handle. So my advice is probably different now than what I would have given years ago. From coming to a point of 3 kids, older teen and 2 young adults, and I have just learned, let's just say I've learned to be quieter, if that makes sense. I've learned just to say, this is what is expected, this is what we're going to do, and then I say nothing, and I'm just silent. Because when I start flipping out and freaking out, or I become angry, or I start becoming irrational, then the irrationality of them comes out as well. And so so even now with this last homeschool year, homeschooling a 17, 18-year-old young man, still some of these things would come up, and I'm like, this is what I expect of you to do. there was no arguing or anything. I just I stood my ground. And I don't allow the back talking. I don't allow, any type of rude comments or anything. And they've learned that. They know that is not respectful and that is not how we speak to one another. And so it sounds like to me that you have done a lot. And I love that for you. I am so glad because I love intentional parenting and I love intentional homeschooling. And so to this mom, you have done a lot. Now, if you are in a similar situation and you have not done these things, go back and listen to her question and try implementing some of those different things that she has said because they're wonderful. So, I'm going to give you a little pat on the back right there. This is not about you. This is about her. And so there is some pride. I would say maybe to spend some time on maybe you and her, find some type of Bible resource, maybe something that is specific to tweens, to young teens, that you and her can go through, that maybe it's not even something like she has to read something on her own. You guys just sit down and read, and you pray, and you discuss it, and maybe afterwards, or maybe have a snack during, or afterwards you guys have a fun little 30-minute TV show or something, or a YouTube channel that you watch afterwards, just to have that contention, so that contention not there. So she sees mom is actually on my side. And I think what's going to happen is it's just going to take time, and it's going to take maturity. And you continue to model to her. The time management is very difficult. I would say that was probably one of my biggest frustrations with my kids, especially with some more than others. And I did everything that I could. And eventually, she's 12, so I'm not saying you could let her fall on her face, and it sounds like you have, but then there's ramifications. There's consequences to this. And part of the consequence is you having to help her redo her work. And that's very hard. And that's frustrating to do it over and over and over again. And they don't recognize the fact that if she had just done it and done it well and managed her time well, mom wouldn't have to be sitting here until 8 o'clock at night helping you to redo this kind of stuff. There isn't necessarily a respecter of mom's time when our children are younger. Unfortunately, as they start to get older, they start to see, oh, wow, okay, this really does take mom a long time. Oh, I didn't realize mom actually got into the kitchen at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon to start making dinner so we could sit down at 5:30, 6 o'clock. I didn't realize that she spent so much time. They don't recognize that. And that's okay. That's just their perspective. So I would say it sounds like you have done a really good job of giving her ideas, and you can choose to maybe continue to let her just kind of fall on her face. Or you can say, you know what, I've decided that I'm not going to let you continue to fall here. When you get older, as they get older, maybe take on some jobs and the time management is off and they get to work consistently late, they might end up finding themselves fired from that job. And so those are consequences. And you know that that's a consequence, whatever. They're 16 years old. They can go get a job somewhere else. But that doesn't look good to say I was fired from my job because I was always late or something like that. But when it comes to the homeschool and the impact that it's having upon you, I would say to take that time to have that out of homeschool time, just you and her together on your relationship, so she sees mom is actually on my side. Pray for her maturity. Pray for your wisdom. And I think that you will notice a big difference in years later. I know you're like, wait a minute, what years? But just continue to be consistent and to take more of a quieter, like this is what is expected. You can do this. And if she is not receptive to you, dad needs to definitely be involved. Dad comes in and says, look, this is what I'm expecting of you as well. And I'm sure it sounds like you have a great relationship with her, so I assume she has a great relationship with her father, and maybe she just needs that perspective and that respect of him as well. And I pray for all three of these moms and the rest of you that these concerns and things that you have. Now, if you listen to the episode from Monday, episode 463, we kind of talk about this too, keeping things in perspective and these, the problems, the troubles, and the discouragements and difficulties of today, you will get through it. Continue to pray for wisdom, lean upon God, and this is just a part of your process and a part of their process of sanctification and growth and character building and all of those things that are hard, but in the end are really good. If you have a question that you would like me to answer on the next Q&A, go ahead and check out the link in the show notes. And if you are ready to grab your ticket for Little by Little Homeschool Conference 2026, that link is in the show notes for you as well. Cannot wait for September. It's always a beautiful time of the year to be up in the Northeast, so maybe you can tack on some time to do some driving around in the countryside and just enjoy the beautiful weather. Okay, I'm going to go. You have a great day.